Okay, good morning everyone. Today's session is on in sample application of LSTM. What we are going to see today is how you can classify text using simple LSTM models. So you can see what we are going to do today is we have collected a data set of SMS messages, and we are going to find out based on the content of the message if it is a spam message or if it is a non-spam proper message that somebody is trying to send you. The dataset that we have used for this is collected from the UCI dataset, and you will find a detailed description in the Kaggle's website, and the source is this. So if you are going to use this data set for any applications or paper, please do cite these sources. And before we start with the process of seeing how LSTM works, it will be a good idea to see how the data set looks like. So the data set is simply like this. What you have is a set of SMS messages which are classified into two categories. The first column is the classification as either spam or non-spam. The non-spam is represented using the word ham. So ham it represents decent good messages, and spam represents spam messages. So you can see the spam messages are typically of this type, and ham messages are something like this. The ham and spam messages have been collected from multiple sources by the people who compiled this dataset. So you will find them rather absurd for certain cases, but they do make a lot of sense for machines. So it kind of makes a lot of sense that we use that as a starting point for teaching our LSTMs. And please remember that what you are seeing here is an SMS. What we will be doing is we will be feeding word by word into our LSTM, and we will be trying to get at the end of this sequence if the message is ham or spam. So that is the idea. So you can see there are about 5,000 to 6,000 messages, a large number. So if you want, you can just have a look at individual messages also. But we are going to use machine to identify if it is going to be a spam or if it is a proper message. So what we do as the first step is we read the data set in the form of a table. So you can see here I have used the read table function to read the file. Okay, so what happens is the dataset gets read, and I'm reading it from the source, and the text type that I am expecting is that of string, because all the contents are strings. So you can see the dataset gets imported, and it gets imported as 5572 cross 5 table. So it takes 5 columns. Column 3, 4, and 5 don't contain anything, but somehow it picks up all 5. So what we will do is we will remove 3, 4, and 5. It's kind of mostly contentless. For us, the only contents are V1 and V2, the first column and the second column. First column gives me the class, second column gives me the message. So after this, what we do is we just pick the first and the second column again only. So all rows, first and second columns only. And I just overwrite the previous 5 column data set. And then what I do is I set the properties of the table that I have read just now and give the column headings as class and message. So now you can see instead of V1 and V2, what you're seeing here is class and message. And also the table size has changed from 5500 something cross 5 to 5500, that same size, into 2. And if you give a head data set, it just displays a small subset of the data set that we have just imported. Right? That's what you are seeing here. So the step 2 after importing the data set and removing the unnecessary data is to just have a look at what is the content in the data. So you can see what I have done is I have picked dataset.class. That means I am taking the class column of the variable or the table called dataset, and I'm converting that into a categorical vector. From string, I'm converting the data type to categorical. Right, so that is what is happening here. So you can see the input is dataset.class. That means the class column of dataset table, that is getting converted from string to categorical, and that is again written back into dataset.class, which means that after this the class column of the table dataset would have been overwritten with the same data, but the data type would have changed from string to categorical. And if I want to describe, see how the summary of the class looks like, I just have to type summary of dataset.class. So class column of the dataset table, I want to find out what are the summary contents. I get this two: ham 4825, spam 747. So there are 4825 good messages in the dataset as classified by the people who compiled it, and there are 747 spam messages which have also been inserted by the people who made the dataset. So you can see this is kind of an unbalanced dataset, and most of the traditional machine learning algorithms will have difficulty learning these type of things. So as much as possible, I will suggest that for training your algorithms, try to use balanced data sets where the number of samples that belong to all the classes are equal. But LSTMs are able to learn even in the presence of these unbalanced data sets, so it should not be a big problem for us. We will see how the accuracy looks like after it is done. Right? So next we go to the step 3. The step 3 is to partition the data set into training and validation, because the data set that we have got is just a single file of a very large number of rows. If you remember, we have just seen the file in Excel. So what we want to do is we want to use some data to function as the out of sample data and some data to work as the in sample data on which the model will be trained. So what we are doing is, instead of using cross validation this time, we will use holdout. Holdout of 0.2 means 20% of the data of the entire data set will be removed and will be used as validation data. So what we have done is we have split it into 20% validation and 80% as training. That is what is happening here. So data train is dataset training of CVP. Data validation is dataset of test CVP. So training and testing data get split into two. After the splitting of data, what we do is we are going to just simply store them in different variables, because it can get a little bit intimidating if you are using dot indexing and making it work. So just to make you understand a little bit easier, I am just taking the message column of the training data partition and moving it into a variable called text data train. Similarly, validation data's message column, I am simply putting it into text data validation. And similarly, what I'm doing is the output, the y data, the class variables are also being moved into two different variables, just for ease of understanding, nothing else. This you can also directly work with the table context, but just for ease of understanding, we are moving it into different variables. The next step that we have to do is to have a visualization of how the um, words in our SMS database look like, because this is all set of words. So I just want to see how the words are spread out and how they look like. So the best thing that you can do and the most visually appealing way of doing that is with the help of something called the word cloud function. It's just a single function, word cloud, which data set you want to visualize, text data train, and give the title. And what you come up with is something like this. This is the representation of the words that are present in your training data set. So you can see the bigger words that you see are the ones which are the most frequent. The smaller and smaller sizes that you see are the ones which are less and less used. You will also see that all the words may not be present in the corpus or the in the word cloud. Only the ones which are most frequently used you will be able to see here. You can set the parameters of that to visualize it in the way that you want, but visualization is not what we are interested in right now. I'm just trying to show you that the words like call, you, get, go, come, these are the ones which are most frequent in the training data set. You can see free, so this most likely is to be going to be a spam kind of thing. So you can see these are the words which you will find very commonly being used. So that is done, and once you visualize this, it actually does not have a significant it does not directly impact how LSTM works. This is just for visualization, please remember that. Word cloud is not going to be used in LSTM in any way. It is just for visualization and to help you understand how the words are spread out in the dataset. This is what LSTM is more concerned about. We have to first do pre-processing of the dataset. So what you have done here as the first step is to tokenize the document that is given to you. So each row that the MATLAB has read is considered to be one document. And you can see that this document is split into individual tokens. Each token, U is one token, done is one token, say is one token, so is one. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 tokens. So you can see here 17 tokens. So each word or character that you are seeing separately are individual tokens. So basically the sentence gets split into individual tokens, right? So here also if you see one other example, 7 tokens, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So comma is one token, question mark is another token, fair is one token, enough is one token, anything is one token, going is another token, on is another token. So you have 7 tokens in this particular sample. So that is how tokenization works. You take the sentence, it automatically, the tokenized document actually splits it automatically into individual chunks and each of them become one token. So once the data is tokenized, next step that you do is to convert the text into lowercase and remove all the punctuations. If you remember in the previous line, we saw the punctuations were also considered as one token each. And unfortunately, what happens is that the capital and small case letters or small case words are considered to be different by the machine usually. So what we do is because the meaning does not actually change if you capitalize one word or make it smaller case, we are bringing everything into the same level. That is, we are converting everything into lowercase words. So all capital letters will become lowercase, and that can be realized by just using this single function which is called a lower. It is that easy. You don't have to bother about anything at all. Entire dataset will simply become lowercase if you just use this lower function. And the next step that you have to do is we have to remove punctuation marks. Punctuation marks are like embellishments for any language. Machines learn well even in the absence of punctuation marks. And unfortunately, if you use punctuations, each punctuation is also considered as a token by the machine. So if you remove punctuation, you are not losing a lot of information, but you certainly will be able to reduce the size of your tokens. So that is why it is usually a good idea to remove the punctuations. So if you look at this, the validation documents, um, I think the previous one, see, you don't say so early or three dots, you see already then say three dots. That from 17 tokens has now become reduced to 11 tokens because I have removed all the dots that I had. I had 6 dots in this. So they got removed and now I have only 11 tokens. So the amount of tokens or the number of tokens and the amount of memory that I will save is significant when there are cases like this. And you can see all the messages that you are seeing here are all now in lowercase. So just by using lower and erase punctuation functions, these are both built-in functions in MATLAB, you can in one shot reduce the number of tokens that are there. Tokens are important for LSTM applications, as we will see in the next few lines of code. So this is how easy MATLAB makes your life. So, and that is why I always try to use MATLAB wherever possible for doing these kind of applications. So the third step in pre-processing is to remove something called stop words. Again, there is a built-in function called remove stop words. What are stop words? Stop words are things like um, a, and, the, those kind of things which are not actually relevant to understanding something, but they are useful from a language perspective. For example, if you want to say this is an apple and you want to say that is a mango, so this is an apple. So is and an are things which you can dispense with. This apple, that mango conveys the same meaning. Unfortunately, it does not make good English, but for machines, that is good enough. So what we do is we use the function remove stop words to remove all those things which are not directly relevant to understanding the language. So you will see that we will remove all those kind of words. Okay, so this is, you can see here, after the same validation documents, all the unnecessary things are gone. Right, so you can see a and the those kind of things are all gone away. So now we have again further reduced the number of tokens. So if you remember, we started out, this is the validation data sets first sample. We started out with 17, then we removed the punctuations and we reduced it to lowercase. That brought us to 11 tokens. Now after removing stop words, I get 9 tokens. So basically what we have done is we have approximately reduced the size of our document by half. That's all that you need to do classification. So these kind of pre-processing steps are very useful for reducing the size of dataset. Right. So what we have done is we have, after doing all that, we are just displaying some of the documents. And then after doing all the pre-processing, we look at the word cloud again using the word cloud function, and you can see now you see something slightly different. It's something which kind of makes a little more sense. Almost all of them are quite useful and make a little bit of sense. So all the things which are like articles, prepositions, all those things are now gone. You have only the things which convey proper meaning. Once I have done the pre-processing, next step is to create word encodings. Word encodings is simply done by using this function called word encoding and giving the input data set that you want to encode. So once you give this, the output of the word encoding will be the encoded uh, structure, which will list out how many unique words were there in the data set, and it will create a vocabulary of all the unique words in the data set. So total 7,757 unique words or unique tokens were present in the data set, and it has stored all that to create a vocabulary. So this system that we are going to create will be able to understand 7,757 words. This is a very small number because in real life applications there are millions of words possible. So it is usually a good idea to come up with a larger vocabulary if you want to deal with things which kind of require user inputs and which can cause inputs of multiple types of, or people can enter anything they want. In that case, learning will become slightly difficult if you have a very small vocabulary. The larger the vocabulary, the better will be the learning. Unfortunately, for that, you need to have a larger data set. So for this example case, we have a vocabulary of 7,757 words extracted from about 5,500 SMS messages. So this is good enough for our application. And once that is done, what we do is we just try to have a look at what is the length of each document. Okay, so the length of each document is being checked out. So you can see each document in the training data set 16, 6, 26. So each of these have how many number of tokens. That's what we are trying to just have a look at. Similarly, what I do is next step, I will just try to find out what is the distribution of document lengths, that basically which means that each SMS message, how big is a typical SMS message. That's what I'm trying to find out. All right, for that what I'm doing is I'm doing something called tabulation. So the function tabulate in MATLAB gives me an option to find out what is the distribution of the data in the input vector. So I have an input vector called document lengths. If you have a look at this, the document lengths is simply the sequence of the number of tokens or the length of each SMS in the training set. So some have got 16 tokens, some have 6, some have 26, some have 7. So it's different. So what we want to do is we want to find out what is the roughly what will be the ideal size of our SMS for further processing. So what we do is we just do simple tabulate. You can also do histogram. I just wanted to show you how tabulate works, so that's why we are doing this. So you have 3 columns which are generated as a result. The first one represents the uh, number of tokens. Second column represents the count, that is how many messages have this many number of tokens. So you can see 8 tokens are present in 258 messages. So 258 messages have only 8 tokens. 317 messages have only 7 tokens, and so on. And the third column represents what is the percentage of the entire data set that these convey. For example, a token size of 4 is present in 480 messages, and that constitutes 10% of the dataset, roughly 11%. So that gives us an idea of how the data is distributed in the training set. And if I just want to plot the information, I just use bar function. I take the first column and the third column. First column is the token length, this, and third column is the percentage. So if you look at this, this is what I get. So you can see the x-axis is the token length, y-axis is the percentage, and as you can see, most of the messages have contents which are less than 30 tokens, right? So what we can do is we can set the token limit as 30. You can also have 40, does not matter. But unfortunately, the problem is that if you have set a very large token length, we will have issues with padding the sequences. We will see how that happens in the future. So it's a good idea to choose the token length which is covering most of the patterns and does not require you to do a lot of zero padding. How that is done, we will see in the next case. So what we have done is most of the training documents have less than 30 tokens, so we will use that. Next step is to convert the document into sequences of indices using doc to sequence function. So what we have done is we have done sequence length of 30. And if you use the doc to sequence function, again a built-in function in MATLAB, we use the encoding that we have just done in the previous few lines on the documents in the document train variable, and I convert all of them into length of sequence length. Sequence length is set as 30. So if you even have 8 tokens in your document or in that sample, it will zero pad the remaining empty locations to create a sequence of 30 size. And doc to sequence, what it does is it just creates a cell array like this. All right, where each cell or each location of the cell array will have the corresponding value to the vocabulary that it has created. For example, if this was hello, in the encoding that we have created, hello will be represented by a number 21. What may be represented by 64. So this is like a number representation of the tokens that we already have. All right, so we are converting the document into numbers. And same thing is being done with the validation data also. Doc to sequence function is used for the purpose. And the next step that we do is to design the actual LSTM model. And obviously the input size is 1 because I am going to give the input sequentially. So it will always be input size equals to 1. Embedding dimension is 50. This is an important part of LSTM. Embedding dimension gives you an idea of how close certain words are. It's not like correlation, but another representation of how closely different words may occur together, or how relationship between words can be represented. For example, king and queen may be similarly related to man and woman. So how do you understand this? You cannot simply use Euclidean distance or any distance measures. So word embedding is typically used, and training of word embeddings are done to typically identify relationship between words. So it's a very important part of natural language processing and very interesting also. So there are several ways in which you can do this, but for the time being, because our vocabulary is very small, we will be using an embedding dimension of only 50. And the number of hidden units, again done by using trial and error, we are taking it as 80. So you can have 100 or 200. That is number of hidden neurons that you have. And you are also picking how many number of words you have. So this is encoded num words. Num words that we had was 7,757. That many number of words we had, and number of classes that you had was how many in the training dataset. We had only 2 classes, spam and ham. So num classes is 2. Num words is same as the total number of words in the training dataset. After that, you have set the layers. First layer is the sequence input layer of the size, input size. Input size is 1 always. Next followed by the word embedding layer of embedding dimension and of the size. So basically what we are doing is a word embedding layer maps a sequence of word indices to embedding vectors and learns word embeddings during training. So the word embedding layer will start with basically no idea of how words are related, and during the training process this word embedding layer also tries to understand how the words in your data set are related to each other. It's very different from correlation between variables. And it's an integral part of NLP, and it can be very interesting if you want to learn further about NLP or natural language processing. This is followed by an LSTM layer, which is represented using how many number of hidden units you want and what is the output mode you want. Output mode is last, which means that once all the words in the sequence are input, once the last token or the last word in the sentence goes in, only then you generate the output. That is why last. Because first you have to input the SMS text, the system reads it word by word, and only after the entire text is over it will tell you if it is a spam or ham. So that is why the output mode is last. If it required continuous outputs, it would be, I think, sequence or something. We will see that in the next example. So you will have a different variant for this if you want continuous outputs. The next layer is the fully connected layer. This is required mainly because we are having two classes. So we have to have a fully connected layer. This is followed by the softmax layer and a classification layer to find out if the system is spam or non-spam. And this is what you get as the output sequence. So you have 6 layers, and the classification output is cross entropy is the loss function that we are using. That is typical for almost all the deep learning models that you use. Now next step that we have to do is we have to give the training options. So what is the optimizer we are using? We are using Adam as usual. Mini batch size is again 16. You can have larger or smaller. 16 is good enough. Next is setting the gradient threshold. This is for gradient clipping. If you remember, we were talking about something called the exploding gradient method or the exploding gradient problem. So we are using gradient threshold to clip the gradient at 2. So it is not necessary all the time, but for making sure that there is no exploding gradient problem that occurs, we are using a gradient threshold function. And the data gets shuffled every epoch. And then you have another thing called validation patience 10. This is just for making sure that once the data set or the validation data's error becomes increasing, then you can see here can be larger or equal to the previously smallest loss before the network training stops. Okay, to turn on automatic validation stopping, specify a positive integer as the validation patience value. What this actually means is that typically if your algorithm is learning properly, the training error should reduce and the validation error should also reduce. But once your model begins to overtrain or overfit, you will see that the training error may still be reducing, but the validation error will begin to rise up again. This is a sure indication that there could be overfitting that is going to start. So what we do is we use this validation patience value to ensure that overfitting does not happen. And how that is being enforced here is that the learning process remembers the validation errors, and the lowest validation error is remembered. And as you see the validation errors, once they begin to rise again after going down, it will wait for 10 iterations before the algorithm terminates. So this will prevent overfitting in a good way. And again, the validation data is being set, X validation, Y validation, and we are going to plot the training progress as well. So once that is done, you go to the next process, which is to train the network. Input is X train, output is Y train. The layers we have already defined, and the options have also been defined. And if you look at this, we have got the training progress, and the validation accuracy has gone to 99.1%, which is quite good for us. And please remember, if you do not understand how iteration number has automatically become 8340 and iterations per epoch has become 278, which are very weird numbers, how did they come up? They came up because of this. Iterations per epoch are calculated automatically by using number of training samples divided by mini batch size. And total number of iterations is iterations per epoch into number of epochs. So these are exactly these values to the nearest integer. It's usually not rounded up, it's rounded down. So that is done. And once the model is trained, you can go for validate. You can have a look at the confusion matrix also. So what I have done is I have just simply used YCAP validation equals to classify. Classify is a function which can be used for classifying data using a pre-trained model. So classify, I have a net, and then there is the validation data. So if there is any new data which has come in, all that you have to do is you have to pre-process and convert it into the doc2 sequence format, that is in the sequence format, pass it to the net, and it will give you the output YCAP. And the output plot confusion gives you the confusion matrix. And as you can see, the correct classification of ham to ham, that is non-spam messages to non-spam, is 86.6%. 10 samples are getting misclassified here, and you can see the 139 messages were in the spam category. They are all getting almost 100% correctly classified as non-spam or as spam. So there is zero misclassification which happens. So even with this unbalanced data set, we have a very good accuracy of 99.1%. So this is how a typical LSTM for sequence classification works. We will have a look at certain other applications of LSTM in the future lectures also. So that is all for the time being. Thank you very much.